Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Unity Halton Peel on this Palm Sunday, 2023. Not sure where the first part of the year has gone, but here we are. So as always, this is an opportunity for us to reflect on one of the few Bible stories that appears in all four Gospels. And this is one of my favorite cartoons. So Jesus is preaching to the masses, and he says, "Okay, everyone, now listen carefully. I don't want to end up with four different versions of this." And yet we have four different versions. And I've given you the citations there in case you want to look them up. So this is one of the few stories that the Gospels agree on. This is one of the few stories that is pretty similar between the stories. If you've heard any of my Christmas stories lessons, you'll know that only Matthew and Luke have birth stories, and they are very different. And what we consider Christmas is actually an amalgamation of them. But Palm Sunday is pretty much the same in all four Gospels. So let's just take a few moments and just give ourselves some context. What do they have in common? Well, they have a colt or a donkey or an ass, depending on which translation you're using. They refer to palm leaves. There's a quote from Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. There is a crowd, and the political and religious leaders are upset. So those five elements appear in all four stories. So what do we know historically? Again, the Bible is something that has gone through 2 millennia of time, that has gone through a number of translations. I know of a website where you can find a bazillion, well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but an amazing number of languages, translations, versions of the Bible. And some of them, there are slight differences in how we use language because language changes over time. So what we have here is a map generally of the area in which the Christian scriptures takes place. And we are looking at this very little route between Bethany and Jerusalem. It's really not that far. When we think so much about how long it takes us to drive somewhere, but this was not an easy walk, but it was a doable walk. So it's something that we can put ourselves into that idea of, you're walking with a group of people. It's unlikely that Jesus walked much of anywhere without not only his 12, but his support group, the people that wanted to hear him, the people that wanted to serve him food and drink and be a host to him. So what we have in this time, just as another element of this, was the expectation. So we have an expectation of Rome is in charge, and we're not really liking how Rome is treating us. So we're going to expect, the expectation of the Messiah was that he would be a worldly king who would overcome the Romans and allow the Jews to be free. And yet, their own material, their own scriptures said otherwise. So many were expecting a king on a white stallion, with gold and embellishments and things like that, not unlike gentleman here in the picture. And yet we are told that he rode on a donkey. We're told that he rode on an animal that had not been broken, that had never been ridden before, which, from what little I know about horses and equines generally, you don't just jump on a horse. A horse needs to be taught to accept a person, perhaps a saddle, a blanket, whatever. It's not something you do. And it has, certain physical calamities if you jump on a horse and it bucks and throws you. So the fact that he came in the most humble of animals, even now we don't treat donkeys the same way that we would treat horses. So this is an amazing, the expectation was not the reality. And their own scriptures, as I said, had said that they were going to be coming on a donkey. Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter Jerusalem. Lo, your king comes to you, triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So the expectation that they had kind of grown away from their own scriptures into what they saw around them, what they saw with Rome taxing them and dictating how they were going to behave and what societal norms were allowed and what of their religious beliefs and practices were allowed. So this is something that, is something that you can feel as you're reading the scriptures. You can feel the anticipation that Jesus is going to come and solve all their problems. And even today, we have people in Jerusalem marching through the streets, with the palm branches, recreating that scene. And we have an observance of some description or another, throughout Christian churches around the world. So the big question is, why is this important to me? What do I care? Rome doesn't rule me anymore. Rome has never really ruled me. So why would this be important for me? So I would invite you to come along with me for a little tour. Those of you who have been working through our Lenten booklet, our affirmation for today is, I pave the way for truth by letting go of limiting thoughts. And that's a really good idea to have. That's what our whole series has been about in the Lenten series, has been about letting go of specific things and helping us find the words to do that. And it's not about blaming, shaming, or guilting ourselves for having had a belief or having bought into something or having accepted something, but rather to allow ourselves to say, you know what, I don't need this anymore. As I said to the group, can you imagine what your life would be like if you kept every piece of clothing you ever had from the moment you came out of your mom until your dying day? None of us would have enough room for all of those clothing. We need to release as we move along, let go of those things that no longer fit. And it might be a belief, it might be a thought, it might be a societal norm, it might be something that your family told you, it might be something you were taught in school, you might be something that you were taught in your church of origin, it could even be something that you were taught in Unity. I know as a member of some of the teams at headquarters that are looking at redoing our education and making sure that it's current and active, that we're finding some of the language uses we used to have in the 50s and 60s aren't working anymore because the language has changed over time. The meanings have changed over time. Our understanding of physics, of medical science has changed over time. And Unity no longer has the edge on that because they've caught up to us. They've caught up to the idea that our mind can control our body, that our mind can heal our body. That was radical when our co-founders described that in the 1890s. And now it's commonplace 130 some odd years later. So this is about acknowledging that in order to go through a Good Friday and Easter event, you need to make that choice. Jesus made the choice to go to Jerusalem. We're told that he was hanging out in Bethany. He didn't really need to go. He could have had his Passover Seder with his friends in Bethany, but he chose to go into Jerusalem. He chose to go to where the temple was. He chose to go where societal norms said, you must go to celebrate Passover. So what does that mean for us? It means taking an inventory. It means taking an opportunity to breathe through where we have been, what we have been doing, where we have been participating, and just saying, does this still work for me? I like to use the image of taking out your cleaning instruments, whether it's a vacuum or a brush or a feather duster or a Swiffer or a whatever. And just going through gently, very gently, please do not blame, shame, or guilt yourself for any of the things that you have held to in the past, because they are what brought you here. But it's like, you get to a place, if you go to Florida for Christmas, say, well, up here in Ontario, generally in December, you will need winter wear. But as you arrive in Florida, especially if you are arriving at an airport that doesn't have those arm things, but you're descending stairs onto the tarmac, you'll find yourself shedding those layers rather quickly because you will find they no longer serve you in this moment. So how do we move through this? How do we get into this? Well, I would invite you to use our power for the month, which is love. One of the things that we can talk about too is that we are paving the way as we do this. And raising consciousness is a evolutionary process. It's not one and done. Jesus may have only walked that path once, as far as we know, but how many thousands, if not millions, of people have walked a symbolic path since? As a child in my church of origin, we used to get palms, and we had two side aisles and center aisle. We would walk down the side aisle, back up the center aisle, and we do that twice. We walk around the church twice. That wasn't enough to cover Jerusalem to Bethany, but that was okay. As long as we were traveling this material plane, we will find the opportunities. We will find the fronts to create a safe and comfortable space for us to do our work. Each branch we cast brings us into more perfect alignment with the divine, and we grow in love and compassion for ourselves and for others. Compassion is probably one of the biggest gifts we can give ourselves. That idea that we can love ourselves. Do you remember those of you who used to attend when we had a building? We used to sing a song. I love myself so much that I can love you so much that you can love you so much that you can start loving me. And we go back and forth with that. The idea of compassion. That's what Jesus was doing, I think, is he understood. I truly believe he understood what his destiny was to be, what he was going to go through in order to teach a huge lesson to all of us. And I say that because one of the greatest lessons that my mentor, who saw me through the process of becoming a licensed Unity teacher, which for those of you who are new to Unity is a credentialed leader. I don't have an ordination, but I am certified to do certain things within the church community, that she invited me to her bedside when she passed. There were a group of us there holding space and praying. And for me, that aspect of being able to be there as she took her last breath, being able to be there and have the doctor say she's gone, being able to be there prepared me for so many other things. And for me, my Palm Sunday of that experience was traveling down from my home to Detroit, where she was in hospital, and making that passage, wondering what was going to happen next, wondering what it was going to be like. Was I going to be there when she died? Was it going to be difficult to watch? What was this going to be like? And I suspect that might have been on Jesus' mind too, not knowing exactly the details, but having a general sense. And how we can apply that to our own lives, how we can take that and choose to see our steps as part of this Holy Week, this Easter series. That Palm Sunday being that moment when you make a decision that something needs to change. And then we move into using our faculty of love. Love without wisdom has a tendency to be blind. Wisdom without love may be harsh and cold. These two need to go together. Because when you look at people, and Thankfully, I have not been directly involved, but I have been with family and friends who have been involved in abusive relationships. And part of me has said, oh, why are you still there? I see your bruises. Why are you still there? Why are you not running for cover? Why are you not leaving? But I love him. That is love without wisdom. That is love without the capacity to make wise decisions for yourself, for your family. Because love doesn't know what to do except love. It doesn't have that wisdom to make wise choices, to take a look around and say, is this right for me? Is this healthy for me? Is this beneficial for me? Or is this a burden for me? It doesn't have that aspect. It just wants to love everything, whether it's food or drugs or being with someone or going to the casino. And that's not a judgment, that's just a statement of whatever it is you love to do, you'll do it until and unless you bring wisdom in to corral yourself. I love Disney World. If I could figure out how to live at Disney World, I would, because I have a lot of fun there. And I have the wisdom to know that unless I get hired by them, that's not a way to ensure that I have the financial ability to keep a roof over my head, food in my belly, and gas in my car. So I make those choices, which means when I do get to go to Disney World, I love it all the more because there's that connection. Linked in the mind of God, working from pure knowing and ultimate oneness, they produce perfect ideas in mind and manifestation. And I think that's what Jesus was doing here on Palm Sunday. I think that, and this is just my hypothesis, okay? I have no specific framing for it other than just a what if? How about? So I think Jesus knew that he needed to go to Jerusalem. I think he knew that things were going to shake up. I think he could feel that the energy was moving and that something was going to happen and that he had to be a part of it. And we know from elsewhere in the scriptures that the night before he was betrayed, that he was praying, take this cup from me. So we know that there's that human experience of, okay, something big's about to happen. So I invite you to consider that perhaps Palm Sunday is happening within you, and it doesn't have to be on the day that the calendar says it is, but that it's that opening moment when you say to yourself, I am ready to make a change in my life. I am ready to release something in my life. I am ready to do a different job. I am ready to let go of the house I'm living in and find something that's better suited to my needs. I am ready to let go of my fear of traveling and travel again. I am willing to let go of all of the societal norms I learned about how much food I need to eat, and I'm going to eat in a healthier way. And Palm Sunday is that day when we make that decision to move forward, that we make that decision of where we're heading so that we can head to that place. Because for me, at least, my experience has been whenever I'm ready to release a large part of my life, it feels like a crucifixion. It feels like part of me has been killed. And after spending some time in the quiet of Holy Saturday, I can come through in the newness of whatever it is I've released. That open space, perhaps, or perhaps a healthier view of something, or perhaps some new knowledge because I've taken a course or I've done some studying, whatever. The opportunity to make that new self is available at any time. So rather than focusing on Palm Sunday being a one-off 2000 some odd years ago, I invite you to take Palm Sunday as a symbolic way of setting the stage for your own release work. Perhaps your Palm Sunday is marked with you going out to the dollar store and buying a journal so that you can do your release journaling. Perhaps it's going and finding where there's a new place that you can go for a walk in a peaceful way that perhaps you haven't seen before. Perhaps it's going and looking for a new cookbook from the library to suggest healthier ways to eat. Perhaps it's adding to your prayer and meditation time. There are all sorts of possibilities that you can have. But the idea is that we take that knowledge of something is about to change, and I am willing to go through the process. I am willing to stand here on what feels like a very unworthy beast, the colt, the foal, the donkey, and move forward so that I can become the being that I want to be on Easter. And again, Easter doesn't have to be Easter Day on the calendar. Easter can be every day that we wake up and say, yes, today is a new day. Today I am changed in these ways, and these changes I am going to make permanent for the time being, with the awareness that I might change my mind tomorrow, the next day, next week, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Things change. And it's important that we bring our spiritual faculties to that change and allow ourselves and give ourselves permission to make those changes, to do that release work, to know that we are worthy of making those changes to become the best that we can be. And as we go through our metaphysical tour of Jerusalem, we know that the palms are there to make our journey easy. We know that we have people who are cheering us on to do that. And if you don't have someone to cheer you on, as always, our prayer chaplain is online and Silent Unity is available. There are always people you can reach out to who you can say, I'm making a change. Will you cheer me on? And they will, guaranteed. And before we go into our meditation, I just have to wish you a happy Palm Sunday. My opinion, it needs sprinkles, but let's rejoice in that. And now, as we move into our time of prayer, meditation, and oneness, just give yourself a little wiggle, breathing in this now moment, breathing in the I am of our being, breathing in the divinity that we are, this divinity that is having a human experience, this divinity that knows the oneness of all creation. Joining in this community that we are on Zoom and that we are on YouTube and Facebook and any other place that this may be seen. Knowing that there is no time or space, that as we pray, we are one. We are now. We are together, and we are universal. And we take into our time our monthly affirmations for April 2023. Our affirmation for inner peace. Breathing in, peace. Breathing out, peace. Breathing in, peace. Breathing out, peace. And our affirmation for faith. With every step forward, I am faith-filled and faithful. With every step forward, I am faith-filled and faithful. Our affirmation for wholeness. Attuned to divine life, I heal and live fully. Attuned to divine life, I heal and live fully. Our affirmation for strength. By the power of spiritual strength, I stand steady and ready. By the power of spiritual strength, I stand steady and ready. And our affirmation for harmony. Centered in divine love, I am a harmonious presence. Centered in divine love, I am a harmonious presence. And as we allow these affirmations to cascade through our consciousness, we hold in light and love all those for whom we have a prayer intention, all those who feel heavy on our hearts, all those for whom we share in the joy of their newness, and we cheer those on who are going through challenges. In the silence, we hold their names near and dear. And for this opportunity to come together, for the technology that supports this gathering, we are so grateful. And so it is, and so it shall be. Amen. As I said earlier, prayer chaplains are available. Send your intention to praywithdiane@gmail.com, or you can call Unity, Silent Unity at 816-969-2000. Or you can go online at unity.org and submit a prayer request through their website. Lots of opportunities to reach out for prayer. As always, we thank you in advance for your financial gifts. This is fully supported by your love offerings and tithes and spiritual gifts. Let's just take a moment to bless our offerings, to bless the gifts that we choose to share, knowing that it is going not only to support the work of this ministry, but others that we support. Knowing that as we give, so we receive. We make ourselves open to receiving. Knowing that as the circle runs, we are both a blessing and blessed. And so it is. And for the month of April, we are choosing to support Eden Food for Change. They have wonderful support systems. You can see more about them at EdenFoodForChange.com. If this is your first time watching one of our services, thank you for joining us. Please go to our website for the newsletter. That will give you additional information. Coming up on Friday, I will be leading a Good Friday service at 11 o'clock. That's not our usual time, I know, but that is what works best. The code will be available on the newsletter, which will come out next week. Next Sunday, Easter Sunday, Pat Clarkson will be talking about the way shower. As always, for everyone online, thank you for joining us.